Welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the Power of Music podcast, provided to you by JMI, Jeunesse Musicale International, a global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. Today, we are recording from Tatuí, Brazil, where JMI's YAMsession is held. YAMsession is an inspiring international conference for professionals working with live music for young audiences. My name is Ricardo, and I'll be your host. And for this episode, I'm joined by David Chocron. David is an internationally acclaimed composer, writer, and video artist based in Norway. Thank you so much for joining me today, David.
Hello.
Can you please say a few words about your journey into music?
A few words, yes, I can do that. I began with the ukulele, which led to the guitar when I was 10, 11 years old. The bugle led to the trumpet. The guitar led to the double bass, which brought me to the Berklee College of Music, where I studied composition. Some people around me, especially my father, were great lovers of music, and that was inspiring for me.
How did it start with the ukulele? It's not something that I hear often.
I was always a little bit alternative. Everyone else was learning the guitar, so I wanted a banjo instead, just to be different. And when we found out how expensive a banjo was, I said, okay, maybe a ukulele. And then the 4-string ukulele was very limited, but it made a very easy transition to the guitar. So, yeah.
And after that, what happened? Because I know you've done a lot of different things in your career.
Well, yeah. When I was finished with my education, I was actually a very young student at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I had my own big band when I was going to school there, which I learned a lot from, both administrating and writing the entire repertoire for the big band. When I graduated at 20 years old, I went to Europe because I'm originally from New York, and I was going to visit my family because my mother is from Norway. So while visiting family, I was offered a job at the world's northernmost music conservatory, teaching jazz harmony and improvisation. And I thought this was very beautiful and exotic because it was way up in the north of Norway, a place called Tromsø, fantastic place. But unfortunately, the conservatory burned to the ground about a month and a half after I began working there.
Unrelated, I hope.
Unrelated.
Okay.
I hope so. Someone was not happy with me working there. I don't know. But so from that, then I began just freelancing, and I've been freelancing more or less ever since. Worked in the record business as an arranger, songwriter, producer, etc., etc. And then after a few years, I began working with visuals, also with video. Well, then at that time it was photography. It was before video was ready for big screens. So then we used slide projectors and this kind of thing before video actually became high resolution enough. And this led to me combining and working with multimedia. And that's actually over 30 years ago. So I've been working with multidisciplinary things for quite a long time.
And maybe you can take us back a little bit to Brazil, because you just gave a wonderful presentation here in Brazil where you took us back to Brazil and how that influenced as well.
Yeah, well, I almost, get moved thinking about the moment it happened. I was in Rio in the early 90s, just for a couple of days because I had been in Buenos Aires and I really wanted to go to Rio. So I stopped by Rio on the way home. And no, actually I went to Foz de Iguaçu, and then to Rio. And in Rio, I was recommended by a good Brazilian friend of mine, Célio de Carvalho, that I absolutely had to go to a jazz club called Jazz Alive, which I think was right on Copacabana at that time. It doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And as I walked in, I was just, it felt like almost I was going to church. There was a jazz trio on the stage, and there was a poet. And the poet was reciting his poetry and his storytelling while the jazz trio was playing gently behind him. And it was magical. The audience was completely captivated. And I was moved. I was really, really emotionally moved by this, even though I didn't speak a word of Portuguese. And this was such a revelation for me. I mean, I'd heard of beat poets and I've seen films, but this actually experiencing it and being so surprised by it, I wasn't prepared. I came into this room and was transformed. So I decided this is something I absolutely wanted to do as well. I wanted to tell stories, monologues, maybe even dabble in poetry a bit, and with music behind me, with a band. And I had a band, and I began doing that. I created a multimedia concert experience called The Big One, which was both music songs, some instrumental things, visuals, but also my storytelling. And from there, it went on and on, that I actually wrote a theater piece, and then began writing different things. But this also transformed me as a producer, where I understood the power of storytelling.
I think that's a nice bridge to storytelling itself. You gave an absolutely wonderful presentation a few hours ago here in Brazil for the YAMsessions.
No, thank you.
Maybe can you say a bit about what is the meta-metaphor of connecting the dots?
Well, connecting the dots is an expression we use when you realize something, when you have your aha moment, or when you use two separate ideas, usually, to make one unified thought. But the connecting the dots, whoever invented the expression connecting the dots had no idea of the actual profundity of the depth of this expression, of the metaphor, because connecting the dots is a puzzle. It's an actual puzzle where you have the dots with numbers on them and you go from one to the other. And there are parallels to this in neuroscience, in the way our brain works. There are parallels to this in literature, how we circle the quest of the hero is to go around in a circle. And as I say in my talk, the first dot and the last dot are always next to each other. So if you take a kind of archetypal quest story like Paulo Coelho, what was his name? I'm going to say
Paulo Coelho.
Yeah. His story, which is called The Alchemist. It is a perfect example. He goes on a long journey and winds up home again, but transformed. And this is what happens to us. This is one of the metaphors of connecting the dots, that you've made your way around, and at some point, while you are solving a connecting the dots puzzle, you have a realization. At least for a child. I mean, some of these are very elementary, and you see right away what it's going to be. But when you don't, there's some point along this path where you connect just that dot, which gives you the revelation of what the shape is, what the image is going to be. And that is an aha experience. And that is also one of the important metaphors which is represented by connecting the dots. A metaphor for the art experience. When we get information from an artist, but we suddenly connect with we don't connect with the idea of the artist, because we will never know what exactly the artist was thinking. But we will reconstruct, or we will backward engineer the process of the artist and have a a completely human experience that no other species on Earth has. And that, for me, is one of the defining things of our species. The fact that we can have these aha experiences, that we can realize something and get and have that metaphorical depth, that we can associate that with something else.
Fantastic. And what I really like about the way you speak about it is relating it to coming home.
Yeah.
I think that I'm interested by the term domicide, which is invented after Alexander the Great died. In Greece, they used to have the Greek city-states, which were very home and familiar. Then there was this rapid expansion, and then this very soon collapse of that entire empire. And a lot of people, they lost the sense of home, and they call that domicide, the losing of home. And it's related to a sense of belonging in this world. And there's a lot of people that say that that's exactly what we have right now. And of course, when you don't feel at home in the world, you don't take good care of it, because if you feel somewhere at home, you take good care of it. Maybe it relates nicely to the other.
It relates perfectly. And with Alexander the Great, who was a pupil of Aristotle, this all fits in very nicely. You would almost think that we rehearse this, because when we talk about Greek, we also have the word nostos. And nostos means home. It means belonging. It is the root of the word nostalgia. So exactly when you have this domicide, you are experiencing nostalgia, which is the longing for home. And this is so powerful. What I try to do in my talk about connecting the dots is I try to, it can seem reactionary, because in the talk, especially in my bigger lecture about storytelling, I really do focus on the traditional narrative arc, which was established by Aristotle and then reinforced and tweaked by Gustav Freytag in the middle 1800s. And this can seem very old and traditional, and oh my God, you have to be more avant-garde. What about all the other, the modernists and the postmodernists and the absurdists and the surrealists, and they're all going against this. How could you be so? This is not my point. Now my point is what can be done, the possibilities. We of course have to stand on the shoulders of this tradition, but it is a tradition, and to deny it is to build a bridge without knowing basic physics. Your bridge might not collapse because you might have gotten it right, but if it does collapse and you know the physics, you'll know why. And so I say that with this, what I am striving to do with my talk is, or at least with my studying of this subject, is to try to find out the organic roots of these tendencies, and that we have this narrative arc which looks like a bell curve. Why is it like that? And to me, it feels that we are, although we don't have the cognitive connection with some of these urges and tendencies and things that we recognize, it is nonetheless there. We have been some form of humans have been around for actually millions of years, and this has developed, and there's something in us, I think, that recognizes that basic bell curve, because it is the curve of life. It is the curve of almost all our physiological functions in our body have that exact curve. And it is the curve of life itself, of development and fruition at your maturity, which is approximately 25 years old, and then the long decline. It is of childbirth. It is of lovemaking and the conception of a potential child, which then will set in motion another bell curve of the pregnancy. So it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. You throw an object into the sky, and it is going to make that bell curve. So this is what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to find out why these things happen, because there is, speaking of gravity, it seems to be a kind of a gravity that we have. It doesn't mean that we can't resist it, because as I say, even the smallest sparrow defies gravity every day. So an artist can also defy these tendencies, but it's good to know that they're there, and it's also very revealing about us that we have this silent connection to these physiological things, part of our body. And when you study a little bit of how the brain works, and you find out the capacity for metaphor and our aptitude at recognizing and decoding abstractions, it is absolutely, mind-blowing.
And for me personally, I'm a big fan of innovation and change.
Absolutely.
But I learned myself, and this is a personal experience, I'm not sure if this generalizes, but I've always tried to only change something that I first understood at a level that I thought, okay, now I understand it. And I find that most of the time, and especially when it comes to rituals or kind of traditional elements, that I kind of ultimately have like, ooh, that's a tradition, like I want to break that. The moment I really participate in it, so not just like judge from the side, I don't feel the need too much anymore to change it, because I understand that it has such a deeper level. But that's just the personal.
But then the times that you do decide to break it, it will be done thoughtfully, and it will probably be more successful an attempt at innovation than just denying this. And then we can say a lot of things about think about all these movements from Cubism to all the modernists, the abstraction, so on and so forth, and all of them really enrichen our the arts and our understanding of reality. But there is then also this nostos, this nostalgia, also to come back to tonality in music, to come back to figurative. We were at an art exhibition in Oslo, my wife and I, just a few weeks ago, and one of the most popular paintings there was a simple, and there was beautiful, wonderful paintings in all styles, many abstract. The first picture to be sold was a just wonderfully executed small portrait of a young woman. And there was something about it and one of our foremost artists in Norway was rushing to go and buy it. And he is quite an expert. However, he didn't manage to buy it because we bought it before him.
Fantastic. Let's maybe go a little bit into how this then translate in the way you produce as well. I mean, you mentioned a bit of these three.
Well, so
rules.
if we can say that the narrative curve is born in our single breath or in our pulse, this kind of undulation or this kind of rhythm, then it feels natural to approach any creative process in an organic way. And that means that when I sit down with musicians, I assume the role of an archaeologist. And I dig into the original intention with the concert or the performance. And it is quite revealing because musicians, if we're talking about musical productions, musicians have a lot to think about. They have to master their own instruments, their proficiency. They have to they have to maintain. And they also have to rehearse with other musicians. in ensemble playing. They have to think, unfortunately, at certain level. Most of us have to think of our own administration and our own promotion. We have to second guess the market for music and think, okay, should we have a crowd pleaser? Should we have something that's accessible? Or should we do exactly what we want to do? So when all these considerations are piling up on a group of musicians, they might lose their way when it comes to the essence of what they were trying to express in the first place.
They might lose their way or their why.
Their way and their why. Very good, very good. Okay, you got a job. You can make me sound better. And then comes hopefully a friend, a brother in arms, who wants to defend their cause. And that means that we ask the most basic questions, which, as you said, why? What do you think you're doing? And why are you doing it? These are the super, super most fundamental questions. And this might seem very simple. However, it also can be very challenging for musicians or for any performer. It's asking that question. I believe it's asking that question that everyone really wants to be asked, because it's taking this person seriously as an artist, taking them seriously as a generator of some kind of art. So once that discussion is going, a lot of wheels start turning in the musicians' minds, and they begin asking themselves questions, each other questions. And I try to, as I said, as archaeologist, I try to just dig with not with a shovel, but with a little toothbrush to find out what is below this. And then I have very often found the discrepancies. Okay, you think that you want to do this, or you say you want to do this. So what is that doing there? What is that song doing there? What is that motion doing there? What is that introduction of that song doing there? You have a song that is perhaps about some desperate love, and you introduce it with a joke, or you introduce it with something that prepares people with absolutely the wrong sensibility for that moment. For example, just a crazy example out of thin air, but to make all these things work and be in harmony with each other, and then create a concept from this agreement of devices, of repertoire, and of transitions, and any other devices that one uses within a performance, to try to get these things to shine, to be their best, to be defined and have the purpose that they should have, and not to be scared to take away things or to add things that will bring us where we want to go.
Maybe can you share a bit about your experiences last year in the YAM Producers Forum? And also, never ask double questions in podcasts, but I think it goes nice hand in hand, whether or not it's different to produce for young audiences.
Okay. Right. Okay. So my experience last year, I was one of the two producers in the producer forum last year with a wonderful opera director named Gersende, who came from France, and we hit it off really nicely. And we had not that we had similar approaches, but we had absolutely compatible approaches, and we also had a nice balance of our expertise, as I perhaps know more about music and the performative when it comes to music, as I've studied music, and she comes more from drama, theater, opera, and was contributing with that. And we were involved with a lovely sextet named Ensemble Ferdinand, which are from the Brussels area. And they came with a repertoire for a concert that was about 25 minutes. And they had some, what I would call extraneous elements. They had elements in the concert that were, in a sense, slapped on to a musical concert instead of being integrated or integral or organic to the concept, because there actually was not really a concept. And this is the one thing, is to like dig deep. So it began immediately with my archaeology and trying to find out what they are trying to accomplish, and why they're doing what they're doing, and why they've chosen these pieces. And we realized that there was not an overarching concept, that they had a repertoire that they wanted to perform, and they wanted to do in a way that it would appeal to a young audience. And this is very, very typical. So then we pull out the toolbox and start looking at the pieces, what they represent, what they give us musically, what they give us dramaturgically, and start crafting a performance based on that. And before I'd even met the Ensemble Ferdinand, I noticed that they were composed of 3 instruments with 2 players each. There were 2 clarinet players, there were 2 bassoon players, and 2 horn players. And it struck me that, okay, this is interesting. We can do something with that. However, when they played their initial concert for us, they did nothing about that. It was not a point at all. So this symmetry was, for me, very promising. It gave a lot of potential. And I got an idea about 2 tribes that were very similar, and yet somehow come into a conflict, a silly conflict about nothing. And I must say that for myself, I was thinking about, especially then, the war in Ukraine was absolutely new then, and the senselessness, which I know that the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia, if they were honest about it, they would say, "What the heck is this all about? We are brothers. We are kinfolk. What are we fighting about?" And so this, in a way, inspired this little narrative that there would be 2 tribes of the 3 instruments in each tribe, and that they would discover each other and initially be interested in getting to know each other, but then a conflict arises out of just nonsense, out of nothing, just in a sense, a misunderstanding and so on, and that they distance themselves, and there's like a war between them, and then there's a reconciliation. It's a very simple story. It's a story that doesn't take too much space from the performance itself, but it gives so much richness and gives purpose. And one of the most gratifying things about this was when we were done and had performed it. I believe it was one of the bassoon players that said that it was so much easier to perform the music and to memorize, because we asked them to memorize the music so that they could move freely on stage, that it was so much easier to do this because they had a story now to in a way hook everything onto. The story became a vehicle for the music and the performance, and that was fun to hear, because that's exactly what we want. It's exactly what we want. So that was a very, very fun production. Yeah. And it's a little kind of high risk sport, because obviously you have all your colleagues from around Europe that are watching this, and you do want it to be nice. But I mean, when we're in the room with them, the only thing that exists are us producers and them, and that's it. Yeah.
Oh, I was there, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I sat in the middle on the pillows both.
Yeah, you were
the first
there,
time and the second time, and it was
Great.
night and day.
And now you have to repeat your second question since I used so much of my hot wind here to reply to your first question.
No worries. There's one rule in podcasting: never ask two questions at the same time. So
Right.
it's my beginning.
Well, especially if you ask me, because I go off forever.
Is it different to produce for kids or not that different?
I think it's less different than most of my colleagues would say, because I just try to produce. And you might have noticed at my talk today, I did not mention the special requirements of a concert for a young audience today at all, not with a word. And that is because there are so many theoreticians that know all about that way better than I do. And last year we had a wonderful talk by Scott Rogers, also from Norway, an American from Norway, like me, and that outlined all of the pitfalls and all of the theory behind that particular subject. There's no way that I could sum it up better than that. And there was no reason for me to either, because my angle on this is producing and making the best possible concert you can make. And sometimes I think that defies everything they say about children. That if you make a good concert, you don't have to worry about the 20-minute mark or whatever. It's going to swing. If it swings, it swings. And of course, I think subconsciously we know who we're making a show for. Of course, yeah. But I don't think of it as much as I perhaps should.
For people that are interested, the interview with Scott Rogers is somehow scroll above on Spotify or whatever you're listening. And I did an interview with Scott Rogers after that talk.
Okay.
And what I really liked is I did another interview with Omar, who also writes opera for young kids. And he said it's much harder because sometimes you write an opera for adults, and because they go to this place that is esteemed, they go, and even though they all disliked it, they think they liked it because it's an opera and it's a good one. But kids, they don't pretend. So you can see the honest response. So it has to be good and it has to be captivating. Otherwise, you will see it.
Yeah, they're so honest. Yeah.
If people want to book you for this wonderful talk or find out more about you or connect to you, where can they find you?
Ooh, well, I'm in Norway, and I have a website, and I actually have a telephone, and I've got email and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure they can find me. I have a website that's called davidchocron.com.
Okay.
David Chocron. I say it in American, Chocron. David Chocron.com. Yeah. And you'll send them my way, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
As always.
And we accept, did we say 10 or 15%? I don't know.
7.
Oh, 7. Today for you, my friend. 7.
15, that's fine.
Right, okay.
As always, the very last question. What is the power of music?
Well, the power of music. Do I have to start it with that? The power of music is? I do.
If you want.
But it's going to help your editing, right?
Doesn't matter. Whatever you want.
The power of music is its possibility to transport you in every way, emotionally, in time, in space, in your conception of reality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM, or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide, connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering, and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.